Welcome to Blue Glasses Math. In this podcast, we will explore how our self-perception as math teachers and learners influences our approach to life. Whether you identify as a math enthusiast or not, this podcast is for you. Are you a teacher, a parent, a school administrator, or a student? Join me as we shift our perspective on what it means to be a math person. Let's take a look. All right, you want to hear something really funny? Welcome back to Blue Glasses Math. It is August, and you're probably starting your school year, starting to head into your classroom. And the funny story I want to start with you is that I just recorded this episode entirely on mute. I have no idea how that happened, but when I went to go edit it or take a look and see how it was, yeah, it was on mute. So, anywho. The point is, you can always hit restart, even in your classroom. So in today's episode, I want to welcome you back. I know that some of you have already started setting up your classroom. Some of you might already start teaching. And this is the end of August. And I want to talk with you about the things that you can do before you even step into your classroom, and certainly before you meet your new students. One of the most important things you can do is to think about your own beliefs about what it means to teach and learn math. And your beliefs about your students walking in, because those beliefs will impact every decision that you make in math class this year. So the way I like to do this is I like to start with my math story. So what is your math story? You've heard me ask this over and over again. Pen and paper, 5 minutes, set some music on, light a candle. I don't know. I know the scene's might sound a little woo, but really sit down and think, what happened? What were the moments that shaped how you feel about math today? Maybe it was the teacher who encouraged you. Maybe it was the teacher who, showed up every Friday and played music for you. Or maybe it was a worksheet full of red X's. Every single student who walks into your classroom this fall is also bringing a math story, carrying those stories, even the kindergartners all the way through high school. And this is where you don't need to go online. You don't need to print something out. You don't need to make a fancy bulletin board. It's really just about getting in touch with your own beliefs about what it means to think and do math and what you think your students might be walking in with. Because they're coming in with those beliefs. And I like to use the metaphor. I want you to imagine this glass jar. So this is one of my favorite vessels to drink out of. And I'm going to use this today metaphorically to think about what your students are bringing with them, right? So this jar is filled with your students' beliefs about what math is, beliefs about themselves, beliefs about you as their teacher. And this is also something that we don't have any control about what they come with, but we do have control about what these jars look like when they walk out of our classroom in May, June, or July, whenever your school year ends. And we have control about what the contents of this jar will look like as the school year progresses. Because these jars have been filling drop by drop over the years in math class. And the drops are shaped by little moments, right? The smile after a right answer. The wait time that a teacher gives for a student who might need a little bit more time to think. A sigh from a teacher when they get it wrong. I have one person in my family who actually did have an interaction once with a teacher who said, I guess I called on the wrong person. Now, that teacher may or may not have meant that in a way that was intentionally shaming. It could have been out of sarcasm, but nonetheless, those drops fill into this jar and develop the beliefs. I'm going to talk about why beliefs are so important in this episode, and then I'm going to talk about what you can do to help to fill your own beliefs and your students' beliefs so that you walk out in June with this nice clear glass of water, not a murky mix of things that we don't want in there. One of my favorite quotes is by Maya Angelou, and you may know it, but I'm going to read it to you. And the quote goes like this: "People will forget what you said, People will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel, right? So you might have the most delightful bulletin boards in your classroom. You might have, the classroom set up in obviously a beautiful way. And what goes along with that is what we're doing as humans to make students feel a certain way in math class. But stick with me, because I'm not talking about just making everything hunky-dory and comfortable, right? What I'm talking about is, like, what do we want students to believe math is? Do we want students to believe that math is a set of steps and procedures that we follow step by step that makes them feel real comfortable? Because every time the teacher gives a question, all we have to do is, like, look at that anchor chart, follow the steps, boom, doom, we got the answer. And I said doom because that's really where we're headed with that. So let's talk about beliefs. What do we really mean when we talk about beliefs? And this is research-based. This is not just my idea. But when we talk about beliefs, we're talking about the lenses through how we view some aspect of the world, but more importantly, the dispositions toward action. So that's the part that I find so important. Beliefs influence and create our dispositions toward action or not, right? These lenses, these beliefs help students interpret their experiences and even influence the choices that they make when they're doing math. And as I said earlier, they develop over time, and they're byproducts of repeated emotions experienced during math class. So repeated experiences like frustration or joy or curiosity. All those emotions, they come and go, right? They're fleeting. They don't stick around for very long. I want you to think about even just something might have happened to you over the summer, where one minute you're feeling like, oh, this is like the most beautiful beach day ever, and you're sitting on the beach and happy, and then all of a sudden a thunderstorm comes on, and then what happens to your emotions, right? It might be fear, it might be anxiety trying to get to the car before the next lightning bolt strikes. So emotions are fleeting. They come and they go, just in real life and in math class. So emotions like frustration, joy, curiosity, these are things that may come, may go. They might stick around, but they don't stick around for very long. But beliefs are based on the emotional patterns that repeat, and they are stickier. So for example, if I'm in a math class and I feel like I'm experiencing embarrassment or shame from making mistakes because those mistakes are not welcomed as learning experiences, then those emotional patterns turn into beliefs that maybe I can't do math, or maybe I need that anchor chart, or maybe I need the teacher to be sitting next to me in order to be successful. Or I need to copy off of the student next to me. I've seen first graders copying answers off of whiteboards like there is nobody's business. And I'm like, how are 6 and 7-year-olds learning that it is okay to copy somebody else's ideas? Well, it's because they're trying to protect themselves, because they have this belief that if I don't have the right answer on my whiteboard, then I'm not worthy. And they're 6 and 7 years old. So these beliefs that stick around guide the behavior. They guide the behavior that students do. So, like, I'm only good at math when I copy exactly what the teacher does. Or I'm only good at math when I have multiple attempts at a problem. Like, in one of my favorite resources is called openmiddle.com. And in that, there's a resource on the side that I don't know if everybody sees, where you actually get points for every attempt that you made. For every attempt that you made. Can you imagine that you actually get points for that? So that shifts the beliefs, right? Because it's like, oh, okay, I'm not expected to get the answer on the first try, because the whole point of this is to learn how to grapple with mathematical ideas and to develop mathematical reasoning. Yeah. I have heard the term learned helplessness thrown around in schools. These kids don't try, they're not motivated, they're behind, they're this, they don't know their facts, blah, 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 blah. Right? And while, yes, there are moments when students are coming in maybe not as prepared as we would like them to be in their math content. But I wonder if we've really put some thought into where these sort of lackluster behaviors are coming from. We might find that students actually are really motivated. They do want to succeed. But maybe, just maybe, their jar has filled up drip by drip with beliefs that someone else will have the answer first. Or if they wait long enough, they'll be rescued from the discomfort that comes with grappling with mathematics. I'm going to say that again. If they wait long enough, they'll be rescued from the discomfort that comes with grappling with mathematics. These beliefs are not background noise. They're filters. They're filters, and they're filters through which students decide whether am I going to engage? Am I going to persevere? Do I belong in this math class? And while the beliefs are developing, the emotions are not sitting on the sidelines. They're interacting how students make decisions about what they're going to do next in math class. So an example from my own experience is that I was in a graduate level class actually, and I was teaching sixth grade at the time. I was in a graduate level class at Rutgers University, and I was taking a course called problem solving. And the professor would come in each day, and each day that professor would give our class a problem to grapple with. And I would say 99% of the time, this problem was not something that you could look up the strategy for, or there was not a procedure. He wanted us to really be problem solvers. But what was so interesting, and the reason why I tell you that I was teaching sixth grade at the time, is because the class was filled with students who were currently all taking math classes. So like undergraduate classes, graduate classes in mathematics. Most of them were full-time students. And I was the teacher in the room who had taught a full day and then came in the evening to take this class. And most of the time, the professor would give the problem. And I was literally walking in with I don't even know if I had a laptop at the time. I just had like my bag and my notebook. And the teacher would give a problem. The professor would give a problem. And my group mates would go immediately underneath their desks to pull out their giant calculus books or their linear algebra books to see if they could find a solution. And I didn't have that. I didn't have that resource. So I had to pull it out of myself to be brave and say, okay, well, I don't have what they have. And the majority of the time, actually, I think all of the time, the answers, those students had this belief that if they just found the answer somewhere else or found the solution, found the way to solve this problem somewhere else, that everything would be okay. But I didn't have that at my disposal. And that actually became a distraction because the answers were never in the books. We had to figure it out ourselves and use what we knew to figure out what we didn't know. And I tell that story because I want you to understand how the belief of the answer is in somebody else's pocket, whether that even be the author of the textbook, can be so limiting to students. But they learn it over time because drip by drip, what if we taught them that, the beginning of the page in the book tells us how to do it, and then there's 40 examples that we just have to follow those procedures, and then I'm successful in math. And that's a belief that students develop. And so I wonder how we can change that in math class. And I'm putting out this episode. I'm actually glad that my recording didn't take the first time. I'm hoping that it's recording this time. But taking into consideration before you even step into the classroom is why your beliefs matter, why your students' beliefs matter. And I know that you have a huge curriculum to get through and pacing guides and all of these things and quarterly assessments. But I wonder, and I'm not just talking to teachers in this episode, I'm wondering for those people who are decision makers, is how can we structure our year so that beliefs develop in these jars so that our students walk out feeling empowered, feeling like they can interact with others, feeling like they can defend their ideas, feeling like they can grapple with a mathematical idea and come out on the other side unscathed. Because even though beliefs are sticky, they are not fixed. And what I have found over the years working with teachers is it is the way we interact with students and their emotions when doing math that actually can shift these beliefs. Okay, so stick with me for a second. There are different things that you can do in your classroom, and I'm going to list 5 of them here. There might be more, but there's 5 that come to my mind that you can do day one without any preparation, without any physical preparation, right? You might have to mentally prepare yourself. The first one, there's 5 of them. I'm going to read them out. I'm going to read them to you first, and then I'm going to go back and explain each one. So the first one is showing interest in student reasoning. Number 2, validating students' ideas. Number 3, supporting student autonomy. Number 4, encouraging mathematical discourse. And number 5, promoting respect. So now I'm going to go back and explain briefly each one, and then we can talk about it as the season goes on. So the first one, showing interest in student reasoning. Think about when somebody shows interest in something that you do, right? You light up, right? At least I do. Students light up when they know that their ideas matter, even if their idea may not be on the exact correct path. It's totally fine. So instead of rushing to the answer, like the example of my 6th grade teacher when he was saying, and honestly, I don't know if I recorded this in this episode or last episode, so I'm just going to quickly tell the story again. So my 6th grade teacher of math, this one student in my class did not understand how to solve the problem, didn't understand. And he said, well, what part don't you understand? And she kept saying, oh, I don't understand any of it. And so my question, my flip for that teacher, because after that interaction, I sat there and I was like, oh, I'm never going to ask a question, because I really, by the time this whole interaction was over, she was crying, and I was like, this is embarrassing. Like, why would I ever want to ask a question in this class? So instead, I'm wondering if that teacher could have instead of flipped the script and said, well, what part do you understand? Or how far, show me what you're thinking, right? So that's showing interest in students' reasoning. Can you walk me through how you got that? Or can you tell me about how your model, your math model, your drawing, or your picture is helping you understand this problem? So even if their thinking is perfect, your curiosity will help to show them that their ideas belong and that their ideas matter. Number 2, validating students' ideas. So validation tells students that your contribution is worth hearing. And it doesn't mean saying that everything is correct. It just means that you're affirming the reasoning. Maybe you say something like, this is an interesting approach, or I see how you were thinking here. And even in a situation where a student is like maybe going down the wrong pathway, you can say something like, well, this is a common pathway. Let's see what happens what happens next. The third one, supporting student autonomy. We all want the opportunity to be autonomous at some point in our life. And it really feels good to know that we have this human need to know that we can achieve something. So giving ownership back to students. Instead of rescuing students, instead of giving them some type of, what do you want to call it? Some type of anchor chart, or maybe not anchor chart. I keep saying anchor chart. Giving students some type of step-by-step process is not supporting students' autonomy, but it's about giving students ownership. Maybe you want to have them do the step-by-step process, but having them to help you create the step-by-step process, obviously pointing them in the right direction, and asking them, well, what do you think the next step might be? Or how does this, how can we figure this out in another way? And what this helps students believe is that I can have my own agency, I can have my own autonomy, and I can do math on my own and figure this out without having to lean on the support of a teacher or a student in the classroom. The fourth one, encouraging mathematical discourse. Students' beliefs will shift when they see that their classmates have ideas and that they can grapple with the ideas together. And also, sometimes it normalizes the struggle. Here's the thing, though. When encouraging discourse in your classroom, not every student knows how to talk about math in an academic way. So you may want to use some sentence starters, and you can go back and listen to my episode with Adrienne Mendoza, who talks about using sentence starters to give students a way to talk about the mathematics. It is not a crutch. It actually helps them to engage their cognitive load on the math and takes the cognitive load off of the language. And this is not just for English language learners. This is for all learners. All learners can use sentence frames. I use sentence frames when I train teachers, and it is an amazing tool. I used to think it was a crutch, but it has completely changed my life when I'm working with teachers and with students. And the fifth one, which you're probably already doing, Beginning of the school year, you're trying to set up how this classroom runs in a respectful way, right? Respect is the foundation. Students will not take risks in your classroom if they are afraid of ridicule or shame from you or from their classmates. So model active listening, celebrate it when you see it. Model what respect looks like in the classroom. And these are like tiny little moments that you can take into consideration. So it's not just putting the poster on the wall saying, in this classroom, we all respect one another. It's actually using examples, pointing it out when it happens in the classroom. I was in a classroom one time, a kindergarten classroom. It was adorable. We were in the middle of a number talk, and all of a sudden, the class calls out, rule number 3, wait for somebody to finish talking before you talk, or something like that. I kind of butchered that. But basically, somebody, I guess, talked over somebody else and interrupted somebody. And so they all immediately like called out what the rule was. But it wasn't shaming. It was just like pointing it out, right? It was like, hey, you broke a rule. And the rule was a rule about respect. So these are really kind of neat things that I picked up over the years. It's all working with teachers. Okay, so I've given you a lot in this episode, this short episode. What can you do right now in those first few weeks of school? The first thing is, don't feel like you need to do all 5 of those interactions that I just listed off. It's not about checking off boxes. It's about being aware that your beliefs are influencing every decision you make as a teacher. Your students' beliefs are influencing everything that they are doing as a student. So one thing you could do to start getting students to notice their beliefs is to ask them a quick prompt. For example, math is blank. Or when I do math, I feel blank. Collect those responses, hold on to them, and see how those responses to those prompts may change throughout the school year. And just remember that every interaction that you have with your students during math class is one drop in this jar. And those interactions will eventually clear up this water if it needs to be cleared up. It will brighten this water if it is already pretty clear. And all of the things that all of the interactions that we take during math class will help your students walk out of class in June with a nice clear jar of beautiful beliefs. So good luck, and I wish you the best of luck and happiness in your school year. But also know that you don't have to be perfect every single day. These are just suggestions, and I'm here to support you throughout the school year. So if you have a question or you have a comment or something resonated with you in this episode, I'm going to ask you a favor. If you could just take 3 minutes out of your day to screenshot it, repost it on your story. I'm active on Instagram, and I'm active on LinkedIn. I also am on Blue Sky, but I'm most active on LinkedIn and Instagram. I do respond to messages. So if you have a question or you have a comment, I would love for you to do that. If you could like, subscribe, all the things, and also share with somebody else, share with another teacher who may need a little support in helping them throughout the school year. I have a lot of really amazing episodes coming up. They will be dropping on Wednesdays. So I drop them first thing in the morning so that teachers can listen to it on the way to school. So it usually drops around 4:30 in the morning Eastern time. And so it'll be right in your feed for Wednesday morning, kind of to give you a little of a lift during the school year, during the school week. And yeah, I'm here. So come connect. I'm Pam Brett. Thank you so much for joining me on this episode of Blue Glasses Math. Please follow me wherever you get your podcasts and follow along on the conversation on Instagram. And remember, being a math person is all just a matter of perspective.